This past Elul, as the Jewish world was preparing to go into Rosh Hashanah, a member emailed me about a gift that she was sending me. She said it was feldspar with slate, with feldspar crystals. It had been gifted to her, and she wanted me to have it as a New Year's gift for $57.85. I didn't know exactly what to expect. I had to Google what feldspar was, which is a group of minerals that make up more than 50% of the Earth's crust. I pictured getting a pretty little rock that I could put in a dish or in my pocket, like a Lucky Charm. But the next day, this arrived. It was a little too heavy for my pocket. Suffice it to say, I'd never quite gotten a gift like this before. But I couldn't believe the timing, because just a week earlier, as I was preparing for my Rosh Hashanah sermon on grief, I'd highlighted this story in Francis Weller's book, The Wild Edge of Grief, describing an encounter he had with the Jungian analyst Clark Berry, saying, "Our first meeting over 30 years ago was unforgettable. When we sat down, Clark reached to his left, placed his hand on a large rock lying on a table, and said, 'This is my clock. I operate at geologic speed.' And if you're going to work with the soul, you need to learn this rhythm, because this is how the soul moves." I realized this member, this angel, had just gifted me a soul clock. Souls, like feldspars, move at geologic speed. They're not impressed with how efficiently you use every minute, nor tied to the urgent, everyday news cycle, but rather to the leisurely pace of shifting tectonic plates, the growth of an oak forest, the rhythm of ocean waves. I looked at this rock, which now sits on my desk, and realized how easy it is to get out of tempo with soul work, even as a rabbi. To be preoccupied with urgent work right now, with efficiency, productivity, output. This is epitomized by my daily walk to work through Central Park, which I take at the cadence of a professional speed walker, while listening to a spiritual podcast on being at 1.5 speed. My soul clock reminded me that getting my exercise and cramming my head with spiritual ideas was nice. But I was missing the bird song and the turning of the leaves and the noticing of my own heartbeat and breath. It reminded me to slow down on my walk, to take out my headphones and just listen. More information does not equal wisdom. And when we lose touch with the original cadence of our souls, we disconnect from the things in our lives that are the most lasting. It seems that our ancestor, Jacob, needed a little reminder of this himself. We met Jacob in last week's Torah portion, and we were not given a lot of evidence as to why he would become a great patriarch and the namesake of our people. Instead, we read stories of how he manipulates his twin brother to sell off his birthright for a bowl of lentil soup, and tricks his old blind father into giving him his brother's blessing. Jacob is cunning, self-serving, and dishonest. He has accumulated birthrights and blessings, but in reality, he has nothing. No self-knowledge, no real relationships. And when we meet him at the beginning of this week's Torah portion, he is utterly alone and on the run. And then something miraculous happens. Out in the middle of the desert, somewhere between Beersheba and Haran, as the sun was going down, Jacob stopped for the night. He found a rock. He put it under his head like a pillow and slept. Jacob had found his own soul clock. And then he dreamed of a ladder reaching up to heaven with angels ascending and descending upon it. It was his first transformative spiritual encounter. He wakes up and declares, "God was in this place. And I I did not know it. So what was that rock? Well, there's at least a 50% chance it was feldspar, since that's more than 50% of the Earth's crust. But the rabbis believed this was not an ordinary rock. In the Hebrew, it said, he chose me'avnei hamakom, which means from the stones of the place. But makom is one of the names for God. So you could also read it as, he chose from the stones of God. But I would argue, every stone is a stone of God. Any of them can help us facilitate a spiritual encounter as long as you hear its invitation to tune in to the cadence of your soul, to geologic speed. This feels like a very important message for us in this time. I saw a Reddit post from a 20-something this week, which made me so sad. He said, "The demands of today are so much and so overbearing, but at the same time, they expect everything to be done in an instant. I have the feeling the days are running by like fast clouds that I eventually miss, and not to mention the huge amount of information overload that the world has right now. I constantly feel irritated, annoyed, frustrated, and completely powerless and anxious at the same time." And he's only 20. Can you relate? This is what it feels like to be ruled by clock time, to live a life governed by productivity, instant responsiveness, accumulation. In this kind of time, our success and our identity come from our status, our output, our possessions, our likes. But Judaism calls us to look at time differently, with the long view, not just for a day or for the next year, but for the next generation, leolam va'ed, forever and ever. When we get in touch with our soul clock, we attune to the things that are enduring and transcendent, to creating connections and relationships, gaining wisdom, seeking out beauty, creating holiness, the things that can never be taken from us, that endure beyond us, that connect us here on earth as if on a ladder up to the heavens. Jacob is transformed by putting his head on that rock. He becomes a person who learns to prioritize people over things. Only after his encounter with the stone can he become Yisrael, the one who wrestles with the biggest questions, with God, with life. Only then does he become the namesake of our people and teach us how to be Israel.